Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science of SaaS Startups podcast. Today, I'm talking to Sven Efftinge. Sven is the co-founder and CEO of Gitpod. They're an open source developer platform. Sven, welcome.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to kick things off by just asking you a few quick questions to help the audience get to know you a little bit as a person. So the first question is, what is your earliest memory as a child?
Well, okay. My earliest memory as a child. I think some, strolling in summer, surrounding near a lake. I think that's what I often remember.
Yeah.
A very, very secure environment. Very nice, lovely. Yeah.
Nice. And what activity in your life makes you happiest?
Yeah, I still love nature. So I really like going out. I'm a passionate kite surfer. So that's one thing that really gets me into the flow, instantly. Like when I'm on the water, I've forgotten about all kind of work-related things. Anything actually. I'll just, totally focus on surfing. I have that same flow with programming when I don't get too much to do actual programming these days myself, but yeah, that's what I like about coding as well, like this flow state.
Yeah, we live on the south coast in the UK, and my family do a lot of paddle boarding, and there's a huge amount of kite surfers around here as well. It's so popular these days.
Yeah, it is. Especially since Corona pandemic, like everyone seems to picking up this sport, and others, like I'm also doing, a license for boats currently and trying to find a boat. It is crazy. Like everyone seems to want to have a boat and a place where they can have their boat and so on.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. It's a very COVID safe activity, isn't it? Like paddleboarding. So where did you eat the best meal of your life, and what was it?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you say that again?
So where did you eat the best meal of your life, and what was it?
Oh. I have a really big passion for good food. So I have had a lot of good meals. I have a very good friend, one of my best friends. He's also a passionate cook. And I guess, the surroundings really great at his place. So he lives at a lake and has a really big terrace and so on. And I have had a bunch of really good meals at his place.
Okay.
And that is like the last one I had just 2 weeks ago. It was sushi, like self-made sushi, very different to the sushi you would get in restaurants and so on.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice to have a friend who can like dish up that kind of stuff for you.
Yeah.
And right now, as we sit here, what are you looking forward to most?
Just personally, I guess again, it is I'm moving places, so I moved to a small village out. Like I currently live in Kiel in northern Germany. Moved to a small village that is directly at my favorite beach, so I have a walking distance to kite surf, which is pretty cool. And then we are working on some pretty interesting things in Gitpod itself, which are pretty exciting. And I'm looking forward to get that shipped and see that in the hands of users. Yeah.
So hopefully everyone's got a bit more sense of you as a person now. So if we jump into Gitpod, so do you want to kick things off by just giving us an overview of the company and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, sure. So Gitpod is a service or a platform that provides development environments. And a development environment is basically everything you need in order to start coding. So currently, people would, in order to start writing software, this is not easy, right? You would have to install a bunch of things on your machine in order to be able to code and run compilers and then run the actual written code as well. Like you need also dependencies, databases, application servers, things like that. And you do that on your local machine. And so this puts a lot of people off. And also it's just an intimidating situation when you're on board, when you go back to an old project or to an old branch and so on. And Gitpod automates all this. So instead of writing documentation, telling others how to set up an environment where you can code, you write that in code. So we basically embrace this infrastructure as code notion, and so GitOps also. So you describe your dev environment formally in a YAML configuration. You also based on Docker and so on, and then you check that into Git. And that means that everyone in the team is instantly able to spin up a dev environment that then runs in the cloud and start being creative, working with the code. And so that's a product. It is a SaaS service as well as a self-hosted. It is open source. And we see that as kind of the missing piece in modern DevOps pipelines.
I mean, in terms of kind of setting up those kind of instant dev environments, are there other tools available, or is Gitpod like pretty unique in that respect?
No, this is a problem that has been around forever, more or less, and there have been different attempts on different levels in the past. And I think what we do now is, we combine the latest tech like Kubernetes, but also really good browser-based IDEs like VS Code, and put that all together with Docker and so on, and have kind of a solution that now, has very much more advantages than disadvantages, basically. So these things, they're all about compromises and so on. But in the past, the compromises were just too big. So people didn't want to give up their local machines because then they couldn't use their favorite IDE, for instance. So this is solved, right? And cloud were just not there, security issues and so on. So what we are building is really on the shoulders of many others that have been diving into this before. But I think timing wise, now we are really at a kind of a point where we bring all this together and being able to pioneering this into the next level, and really making that mainstream. With a little help of GitHub, who are inventing a very similar product line at the moment.
I mean, one of the things occurred to me while I was kind of looking at what you guys are doing is it feels like, the natural path of technology is kind of democratizing opportunity. So kind of pulling down barriers, whether that be information or cost or just access. Is that how you feel with Gitpod, that this can open up opportunity to a much wider range of developers because you're pulling down, the cost, time and resource barriers that would have stopped them getting involved in projects in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is one angle that is super valuable. Like those when you look at a team, then you have, of course, the core engineers who work kind of 8-10 hours a day in their dev environments. But then you also have a lot of people who don't end up in dev environments so often, like QA people, product people, and so on. They need to look into the code and sometimes do small changes and so on, but they don't do that on a kind of full-time basis. For those, it is super convenient to always know, okay, I just spin up a dev environment, it is ready to code, and I don't have to care, it just works. But also for the core developers, it frees up mental capacity, that you don't have to resync with your Git repos and rebuild things. You just start from where you want to solve a problem. You can even run in parallel. Like a typical workflow with Gitpod is, I have a longer feature branch where I work a couple of days on, for instance. So I have a workspace running and I work in there just normal. And then I get request from a colleague who asks for a code review. That's very, very common. Currently, what people do is they either have 2 copies of the repository cloned locally, or they need to, check out the changes they should review and stash their current changes and so on. So there's a lot of friction in this. And with Gitpod, it's super easy. You just spin up another dev environment. You can have any numbers of dev environments in parallel, no problem. You start a fresh one, use it, and when you're done, you just close the browser tab, or you just, you just stop using it, and then it's teared down automatically and garbage collected by Gitpod. So you don't have to care. You don't have to clean up after yourself. Super convenient.
Yeah, okay. And we've seen some like huge commercial open source success stories, and then other kind of open source software which has never kind of followed that commercial path. What's your plan with Gitpod? Do you plan to commercialize it, or what's the future?
Yeah, so Gitpod is open source. It is it has an AGPL license. And of course, yeah, the plan is to commercialize it. Like we are running a SaaS service with Gitpod, and the self-hosted version, there is a free open source version, but then there are additional features for which the source is only available, but it is not an open source license for which you need an enterprise license. It is very similar to GitLab or MetaMost. Those open source. Open core is I think the name for this.
Yeah, and like, how do you plan to go to market with that? Like, do you see yourself working through partners or building a sales team?
We are currently focusing on a bottom-up approach. I think in developer tools, it is super important to, it is the B2B business in the end, because we are selling to companies and enterprise and so on. But the users are super important. Developers are smart. They really know what they want, and they are, kingmakers for a couple of years now. Like, they are super important people in companies, and they have a say of what tools they want to use and what not. And this fits very well with my developer background, and I just want to build something that's useful and cool and fun to work with, rather than primarily something that just sales and then is not sustainable in the use. So we are focusing on the product and on the user base at the moment, but of course we are also in touch with large enterprises and having some sales activity going on, but we are currently not doubling down on that.
Yeah, okay. And we kind of briefly mentioned earlier just like how much attention the DevOps industry in general is getting at the moment. I think it is second only behind cybersecurity in terms of kind of VC investment and rounds which are going into that. And we're seeing a lot of kind of automation tools hitting the market in different areas, and also things like GPT-3 and OpenAI showing promise as being that kind of software friend sitting on the shoulder of developers. I'm interested, in the mind of developers, like what aspects of the role do they really enjoy, and what do they hate? Like what do they want to see automated away? And then what do they want to have the freedom to focus on? Or is every developer different, and people like and enjoy different parts of the role?
I mean, for sure it is different. Like, but there are majorities, or developers have a certain take on things. For instance, developers like being able to look under the hood, and so they like transparency. They don't like magic that is kind of not clear or confusing, but they like to be the magician themselves. Like they want to have tools with which they can create magic, but not something that is strange or just happened and they don't understand that. So things need to be simple. I like the term orthogonal. So you can, like Lego bricks, you build something and you build something else, and then you can combine that to build new stuff that you haven't even thought of before as a product designer. I think these parts are important for developers. But then, yeah, magic, if it's kind of unclear, is not good. But if it's slick and fast and snappy and super simple, and you removed all the unnecessary steps, that's of course what everyone likes, not only developers. Yeah. And so that's still important. For the AI stuff, that's GitHub just announced their Copilot stuff. That is definitely a very interesting area. Also new space where there will be lots of development, I'm pretty sure. Currently, it seems a bit focused on generating lots of code. I would rather have that, guiding me writing good code, so give me more feedback about my code rather than
specifically
being, super simple to generate legacy applications easily, so to say, right? I mean, lots of code is not generally a good thing. So I think that's the worry that many have, that these tools would just make the copy and paste Stack Overflow approach a bit more handy. But I doubt they will go there. Like, I think this is just the first step, going with code completion here. But what's also important is, linting. That means analyzing your source code and telling you things about the source code. Like, statistically, it is better if you write it like this and that. And that's super value. You wanna have that.
So I saw Sam Altman predicting recently that the price of work happening in front of a computer will decrease much faster than the price of work happening in the real world. I wonder, do you agree with that? Or where do you see the development industry moving in kind of 5, 10, 15 years time?
We have at the same time, we are trying to simplify development, and also, deployment pipelines and things like that. But at the same time, software is becoming more complex. Like, there are more systems that interact with each other. We have, larger cloud infrastructures. Kubernetes in itself is something that adds complexity, and also to development itself. So I think these two tendencies kind of currently wave up to that there is not a big improvement. That, like, coding is still it still means a lot of kind of not so interesting work, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting work in coding is thinking about problems, building abstractions. That's the stuff that goes in your head when you need to tell that the computer, that's kind of the programming language and so on. Then you formalize that. That's also fun, but not if there's too much friction around this, like the tools don't work as you want, or the programming language is just super verbose and requires you to write a lot of stupid stuff and so on. And I think in that we need to become better. The problem solving and thinking about problems is something that will never, I think, completely go away. But with AI, I guess we can get guided quite nicely in the future.
In solving those problems. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of switch up and talk more generally around the kind of startup life. So with Gitpod at the moment, you've raised $60 million at the moment across 2 rounds of investment so far. And in recent years, we've seen the technology scene really start to explode in Europe. For many, many years, it's been dominated by the US in terms of software and SaaS. But now every day it feels like we're seeing kind of exciting new startups coming from all over Europe and especially Germany. I just wondered, do you put that down to anything specifically, or is it just culture's changed and people getting more interested in these topics?
I think it is, there's a lot of talent here, and that's why the money moves here a bit more. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key point. Yeah, there's like Silicon Valley. It's really hard for talent, like to find talent as a startup. It's
so expensive.
Yeah. And then you go out, and of course then there are other interesting areas in the US, but Europe is a very interesting area in itself. Like we have good culture, good people, smart people, good universities here. So yeah, it makes sense that this just happens.
So do you think, like previously all of that talent was moving to America, or is it we're doing a better job in Europe now of kind of producing that talent, teaching kids at an earlier age?
I think both. Previously, because the money and the interesting jobs were in US, a lot of people moved to the US, and now a lot of people don't need to do that. Like I myself, I don't need to move to the US in order to, build something interesting together with a bunch of smart people. I think it would have been much harder to find this kind of funding a couple of years ago.
Okay.
For me.
And can you elaborate on how Gitpod came into being? Like, what was it, a spinout of Typefox, or what was the relationship there?
Yeah, so Typefox is a company I founded together with two friends who are also founders of Gitpod. I think 5 years ago, and it is a consulting firm for developer tools. So we are very specialized in Typefox for engineering tools, like even we build compilers, interpreters, stuff like that, IDE extensions, and so on. Really only that, which means it has been an international company from the beginning because we are so specialized, and so we were engaging with lots of ran our own open source projects, but also supporting and contributing to others, and build for various clients interesting IDEs. And there were also cloud IDEs involved and things like that. And just from doing that, and having the wish, instead of putting our talent to various different clients and and building products for them, I'd rather have more kind of a team feel where we build something cool for us, like the thing that we really want to build. Yeah, eventually we just decided, hey, let's build this. It's about time. We know all the ingredients. We know web IDEs well. We know cloud infrastructure well, and so on. We can put this together, and then we can solve this problem. It's about time that this problem is really solved in that way. And yeah, we started that. I think that's already 4 years ago or so when we initially started developing that within Typefox, and then I think 2 years or so. Last summer we founded Gitpod as its own company and moved over the software and the assets.
And did that give you any hesitation, like committing to Gitpod in the middle of a pandemic, or was it like the opportunity demands to be taken now?
No, we were quite successful with the fundraising, and then there were no other concerns regarding the pandemic. I think that was the biggest question mark, because we've been a remote team anyhow. The product makes more sense in the world where people don't go to their office every day. Yeah. And so if there were some funds who had a bit of an issue because there's all this uncertainty to raise their own money, basically, and so there was this question, but we really never felt that. Like, everyone was super interested. We had really good conversations with many partners and so on, and fundraising went super well. So no, there was actually, it was interesting because I haven't yet met any of the investors in person. Like, this is all video.
They just handed you the check.
Not even handed, right? I have, yeah, but yeah.
So how did you find the fundraising process? Because I presumably you've not been through this kind of major fundraise before. Like, how did you go about developing the right connections, and what advice would you give a first-time founder?
Yeah, network is everything. It is really interesting. But when I first started, I was, I had no connections into the VC space. I was well connected in the development world, in the open source world, and so on. And from there, I knew a few entrepreneurs who could give me make an intro to some investors. But that in the beginning, like, it was really the same pitch. Like, I started with a certain pitch. In the beginning, it was pretty. Yeah, the feedback was, oh, okay. Interesting, yeah, and they're always nice, but it's not interesting enough for them in the case, and so on. But I haven't changed the pitch. What has changed is that I got more and more connected over time, and eventually had another founder joining who came from the VC world and had very, very good connections, actually. And through that, at some point, there was this, VCs talk with each other also all the time.
Once you're in the club,
and so at some point, they came to us and asked for meetings, and then it was still the same pitch, but it was super easy. So everyone was interested, and so you need to get this kind of FOMO thing rolling in the VC community, I think, somehow. So if you
how did you
if you have many people who, yeah.
How did you come to meet that the founder who is kind of connected into the VC industry?
That was Johannes. I met him. He was an associate with a fund we were talking with, and so he found Gitpod at some of the conferences and reached out to me and was interested.
He just really saw the opportunity.
Yeah, and they had an issue, due to the pandemic and so on. So we didn't really get together with a fund. But then Johannes and I, like, we thought, okay, that would be very complementary. Having someone from the space. Also, he's generally pretty smart and pretty good. And so we just decided, okay, let's join forces and do this together. Which I haven't regret yet, so it's really good
Sounds like a good decision.
So that would be another recommendation. If you have only technical founders, find someone who is very business oriented and is really has this kind of this energy for especially when you do VC backed startup, right? Then you need to really also talk a lot with VC folks and keep them updated all the time and so on, which is it's a lot of work, and so you should love that work.
So just a final question. So I like to ask this to everyone. What would your message be for any kids out there who've got a big idea and no idea what to do with it? would you recommend they run for the hills because startups are too crazy, or what would you say would be the first practical steps to get them on the right path to really building something?
I would recommend always build the simplest thing that would tell the story you are trying to explain. Like, sometimes you have an idea, you go someone explain that, showing is always better. So you can try invest a day and build a prototype and then show that to people. This is much better. Also, it informs yourself. So I always like these, going small steps and just doing the next reasonable thing, instead of having, looking at the horizon, having big plans, but no idea how to reach that or so. And of course, ideally you do that for the money or for, this success feeling or so, but really because you think it's a great idea and you have fun building this solution.
Perfect. Okay, well, it's been really great having you on, Sven. Thanks for joining us today. If people want to get in touch and discuss Gitpod, what would be the best channel to do that? Is it LinkedIn or website or email?
Yeah, on the website, we have a few channels. We have a community.gitpod.io, which is a chat. And then, of course, our open source repo is on GitHub. So you can also communicate with us there or on Twitter. There are many ways, but the typical ones, I would say, the ones you would expect. The website is gitpod.io.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay, well, all the best for your next stage of growth, and it'll be really exciting to see where the company goes.
Thank you, Ben. Have a nice weekend.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.